So if you've checked out Zipp's current lineup of wheels lately, something's been kind of missing, an ultra lightweight wheel set, but that's what these are all about. So these are the new Zipp 202 NSWs, and they claim that these are the lightest wheels they've ever made. Now, for those of you in the know, Zipp actually had 202s way back in the day, but these basically update them with their most modern technology, and these aren't supposed to be just light, but also quite aero. So they basically introduced these for those of us who are looking for the most weight savings possible, not only for climbing faster, but also for just making our bikes as light as we can. The thing with weight savings though is that generally means less material, which can oftentimes be used to make a wheel more aero, but they're saying that there should be little to no difference between these and their 353 NSWs, and in some cases, these should be faster. And I actually tried to test this in probably the least scientifically way possible, where I did 2 rides on the same Strava segment. So one with the 202 NSWs and then another with the 303 SWs that I have right here. So these are the ones with the tire pressure sensor. Unfortunately, I don't have the 353s to do a direct comparison against, so this is the best I could come up with to see if these are actually faster. Anyhow, more details on that in just one bit. All right, so first up, let's talk about specs. So the headliner feature, of course, is weight, where they claim that these should be 10,090 grams with rim tape and valves. And what's interesting about their claim is that they say that they weigh every single rim that comes out of production, and any number is actually in the upper threshold of their spec, meaning that most wheel sets should actually come under that number. And for the set that I have, so the front wheel with rim tape and a valve came in at 450 grams, and then the rear wheel came in right around 550 to 600 grams. So well under 90 claim, at least for these. So that's a weight savings of over 200 grams from the 353s. And just for comparison, just because I did ride the 303 SWs for my ride, those weigh like 1,440 grams. But 200 grams is not inconsequential by any means, and makes an even bigger difference since it's on the outside of the wheel, being rotational weight. And these actually use the same ZR1 SL hubs as their 353s, so there's no difference there. But they are using an Alpina Hyperlight spoke with these, and then the rims aren't quite as deep. So these have a constant rim depth of 35 millimeters versus the 353s, which vary from 35 to 40 millimeters with that sawtooth shape. So not necessarily as much as that special aero sauce, but does that actually make a difference? And then for some other specs, this has an internal width of 23 millimeters and then an external width of 28 millimeters. So that's where tire compatibility is going to be different with these, where these are optimized for a 28, but you can go up to a 32. And with the 353s, those are optimized for a 30, but you can go anywhere from a 29-ish or so to a 35. So these are definitely more of that pure road wheel set versus the 353s, which can get into that all-road category. But even for myself, I tend to prefer wider tires nowadays, but if you are looking to go narrower than a 30, these can fit 28s comfortably. And the tires that they sent to use with these are the Goodyear F1Rs, and these are spec'd as a 29. However, on first mounting, they measured around 28, but after a few days, it stretched out to be around 29. And with mounting, by the way, not really much of a struggle, like no swear words involved at all. So I definitely need some tire levers or some tire pliers, but it really wasn't that big of a deal. And then when it comes to setting the bead, so with the front wheel, I actually just used my floor pump and it just popped right in. But with the rear wheel was a little bit more finicky and I did have to use my compressor. But overall, the mounting experience, easy peasy. Unlike the 303 SWs, which that had language that was not safe for work. And these are the most ideal tires to get the most performance out of these wheels, since they actually designed these alongside Goodyear. And when you actually look at the profile with the rim, it's kind of a thing of beauty in terms of how aero they are. So then we now need to talk about aero, since that's what most companies lead with nowadays, including Zipp themselves. So here's their claim. The 202 NSWs with 28s should have little to no difference, if not be more aero than their 353s with 30s. That's 2 different tire sizes, of course, so not necessarily a direct comparison. So a follow-up question I asked is, if all things were equal, so basically the 202s and the 353s were running 30 millimeter tires, which is going to be the faster wheel set? Well, the 202, since there's really marginal differences in terms of aero, and these are just lighter, so there's less weight to haul up the hill. So I was trying to figure out a way to test this, and the best way I could come up with was with a Strava segment, which involves some climbing as well as some flats. So I'd go out in one day with the 303 SWs first to get a baseline, and then go out another day with the 202 NSWs to see which one is faster. However, I try to maintain the same average power on that segment. Now, there's of course real world variables involved, like our favorite 4-letter bad word that starts with a W, but this is basically the best I could come up with, and I tried to find relatively calm days to do these tests. Anyhow, for the first attempt with the 303 SW, so I clocked in at 19 minutes and 45 seconds with an average power of 229 watts. And for the second attempt with the 202 NSWs right here, again, maintaining the same 229 watt average power over the segment, I clocked in at 18 minutes and 55 seconds, so 50 seconds faster. Now, I do have to mention that as I was going downhill, I did feel a little bit of a headwind, so that very well could have been a variable going on. And even looking at Strava's weather, that may be confirming that. However, I do have to say also that with the first attempt with the 303 SWs, I didn't feel any headwind doing that segment. So again, not a perfect test by any means, but even so, knocking 50 seconds off a 20-minute segment is pretty significant. And let's say we even chop that in half for the wind variable. That's still 2% faster. Now, being that these are lighter, does that mean that these are less durable? Well, these basically have the same max rider system weight capacity as the 353, so there's really no difference there. And then these also still come with Zipp's lifetime warranty. But these weight savings obviously come at a price. So funny enough, these are priced pretty much the same as the 353. So why would you choose one over the other? Well, even Zipp themselves say that these should be a faster wheel overall without any meaningful differences in aero. So if you are looking for the lightest and fastest wheel they make, this would be the likely pick. However, I think it really comes down to versatility, where these have a narrower tire width and these are going to be more of a true road wheel set versus the 353s, which are more all-rounders. The other thing to consider though is that the 353s do have that built-in tire pressure sensor, and that technology is pretty darn cool, and I've actually really enjoyed using it on the 303 SW, so that's definitely something to consider. But for overall ride impressions, well, they're super stiff and they're super fast, but I think what I noticed the most is that they accelerate really quickly. And this may have been a placebo effect, but I swear I was just carrying less weight up that climb. But since they are so light, they're also really fun, and well, we all like light and fun. Anyhow, pretty interesting for Zipp to come back with their 202s, and if you have any questions about them that I didn't cover in this video, feel free to drop those down in the comments section, and also be on the lookout for plenty more sports tech videos that are just around the corner. In the meantime, happy riding, and we will see you in the next video.